The Vegas Golden Knights take out the brooms on the mighty Avalanche and earn their spot in the Stanley Cup Final. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate. It is Wednesday, May 27th, 2026. Vic and Neil, one ticket has been punched to the Stanley Cup Final. And we watched this game actually together last night while we were on doing a sidecast with Buzzer, our new partner. And I think as this night went on, the shock factor that the Avalanche could not generate anything beyond a handful of good scoring opportunities the entire night was baffling.
It certainly was. And for all of the people that thought there was a shred of hope that Colorado might be able to make the miraculous comeback in this series, it was quickly shot down. They were the inferior team right from the get-go.
But maybe it wasn't so shocking because the checking done throughout the night in all three zones, gaps, clogging the neutral zone, getting in passing and shooting lanes. And Tortorella said it last night after the game that this was our best job in terms of checking. There was no room to breathe. It was a clinic.
It was. They gave Colorado no room to breathe. Even though the final score was only 2-1, it could have been 5-1 because Colorado wasn't close, I didn't feel, throughout the entire game.
No. And Mackenzie Blackwood, who was tabbed as the starter by Jared Bednar, was exceptional. It's not to say that Scott Wedgwood wouldn't have delivered the same kind of effort, but he was great. And also, we should know right at the head here that Nathan MacKinnon did play in this game for Colorado. Led all forwards on the Avalanche with 22 minutes and 10 seconds of ice time. Played all 119 on the only power play that the Avs had. And didn't look like he was suffering any ill effects from taking that shot off the knee, the stick of Shea Theodore, in game number 3. But I think we were looking for that burst all night, and we never saw it. But I think the reason we never saw it is because the Golden Knights just didn't let him skate and gave him no room.
No, there was no room on the ice for him or for Makar to do what we've seen them do so many nights, which is just burst through everybody and put the Avs on the scoreboard, and they weren't able to do that last night.
And how about the opening goal of the game? So if Colorado's looking to play ahead and maybe start to establish their own sort of game and play from in front, it's Mark Stone taking a stretch pass from Brayden McNabb, and he out-skated Cale Makar to the net, put a deke on, and Vegas is playing in front less than 5 minutes into the game.
But Stone had a jump on Makar on that pass. The credit on that goal goes to McNabb, who made an unbelievable pass right up the middle. Stone was free. He was going south while the rest of the players were going north, and he couldn't be caught. And then a great deke over to his right side behind Blackwood.
Carter Hart stopped Brock Nelson on a breakaway with 6:07 left in the first period. I thought he was one of Colorado's best forwards last night. And then Blackwood had to come up big on a one-handed attempt by William Karlsson a couple of minutes later. But in the first period, shots were 9-8, chances 9-1, attempts 21-16, all Vegas. Although we spoke on Buzzer during that first intermission, and we didn't think that those numbers were exactly indicative of what was going on, especially the chances.
I don't think it was that lopsided in the first period. I thought that might have been Colorado's closest period to Vegas, but still, they go into the locker room down 1-0.
I think the chances are one of these subjective stats that it's somebody sitting up in the booth and they're saying, okay, I regard this as a chance, or I don't regard this as a chance. I didn't see it as 9-1, though, for sure.
No, I don't think so.
Early second period, Nathan MacKinnon missed the net from relatively in close, and Makar was stopped by Carter Hart. And then Brock Nelson again about 5 minutes into the period. And towards the middle of the second, Blackwood had to make 3 big stops on Ivan Barbashev, Colton Sissons, and Nick Dowd. So you can tell at this point now that Golden Knights are trying to get that second goal and create some space here. And we said, you know what? We don't think this is going to be a 1-0 game anyway. Blackwood is keeping it just that.
Yeah, Blackwood kept them from being down by more, certainly in that second period.
There were only 3 power plays in the game. 2 of them went to the Golden Knights, and I think the Avs had a gripe. With 2 missed calls in the second period, first Tomas Hertl on Marty Necas, and then Dylan Coghlan getting his skate out on McKinnon. And then right after those 2 misses, Landeskog was hit with a cross-checking penalty against Sissons. So from your seat, should Colorado have had a couple more power plays?
Well, I would think they should have at least had one. You know, Necas made that play look a lot worse than it was. And the way he was down on the ice, but yet could bounce right back up and not miss a shift. But I think they should have at least had one more power play than they got.
On that power play that we just mentioned that Vegas got, it was Blackwood with 2 exceptional stops on Pavel Dorofeyev, first off the left post and then a glove save off the right post.
And Blackwood continues to shine in this game, which is all good for Colorado. He gave them every chance to stay in this game. And up to this point, they certainly weren't able to capitalize on Blackwood's outstanding play.
Third period. Good chance about 3 minutes and 15 seconds in for the Avs. It's Makar with a shot and Carter Hart with a left pad save. And then less than a minute later at the other end, it's Blackwood holding the score at 1-0, making 2 stops off William Karlsson.
I'd say it again. Blackwood gave his team every chance to stay in this game and try to capitalize on his good play, but they weren't able to do it.
Neil, as this is coming up towards the midway point of the third period, and we're seeing the way that Vegas is defending, I'm starting to think, God, they may not be able to crack through here, that the defensive structure of Vegas is this good.
It absolutely was. And you could see it was like the Avalanche were skating in mud. They just couldn't get there and get the opportunities that they would need to try to pull even, much less try to take the lead in this game.
As we get down towards the end of this game or the end of regulation, your star players, your Eichels, your Marners, your big guns, the McKinnons, Makars, Necas, they are who they are. But the things that win conference championships and ultimately Stanley Cups are your depth players. And with 5:45 left, Cole Smith tips in Dylan Coghlan's shot to make it a 2-0 lead. And at that point, you got to think, boy, this is really going to happen. This sweep is on the verge of taking place.
Yeah, everybody sunk that was a Avalanche follower at that point. When Cole Smith put that tip in, it was like a big dagger going into the Avalanche hopes.
And what about Coghlan, who was called up 7 different times this year, third pair defenseman, and the mileage that the Golden Knights and Torts are getting out of this guy, and Caden Korczak as the third pair, is something that you make Stanley Cups out of.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's your secondary and third pairs that come through for you in the playoffs. Everybody's eyes are on the Stars, but it's those lesser lights that when they get the job done, that's what pushes you over the top.
Gabe Landeskog with the goalie pulled, tipped in, a nature shot with 2:03 left, and we're thinking maybe this is going to be Game 5 against Minnesota all over again. H's did have one more good chance, but really that final minute, there was no possession. There was no nothing. They couldn't get through the neutral zone. And finally, Makar just threw the puck into the Vegas end. And that was that. It was shocking. I think anytime you see the President's Trophy winner go down, it's a big deal. When they go down in a sweep, it opens your eyes.
It sure does. And we've seen it happen over the years a few times, not many, but a few times. I think the worst of all, or the least desirable ending was for the Tampa Bay Lightning when Tortorella's team at that time was the Columbus Blue Jackets, a huge underdog, and they swept the Tampa Bay Lightning President's Trophy team out of the playoffs
in that opening round. And the Golden Knights are 19-4-1 since Torts took over for Bruce Cassidy. But let's flip this over now to the Colorado side. 13 straight President's Trophy winners have failed to make the final since the Blackhawks made it and won the Cup against the Bruins in 2013.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Who knows what it is? You need to get Albert Einstein in here to figure this one out, whether it's the pressure, whether it's the focus that's on that team, whether it's the readiness of their oppositions in every round playing against the biggest dog in the fight. Whatever it is, it seems to be that team that ends in first place. Now, does that mean you shouldn't end in first place? Of course not. You should always try to win the 6-month marathon and give Colorado all the credit in the world. I've always thought that the first place finisher doesn't get enough credit in this league. It used to in the original 6. When you ended in first place in the original 6, you won the Prince of Wales Trophy for ending first. And that was a big deal. It was a really big deal. It wasn't all about, well, oh, that's nothing. You got to go and win the Stanley Cup now, because there was only 2 rounds after that to win the Stanley Cup. The playoff tournament was originally formatted to give teams that had injuries during the regular season a second shot at success. Mm-hmm. And so that's why Frank and Lester Patrick put the playoffs into effect in hockey way back when. And nowadays, after an 82-game schedule, you come out of it with the best record, and everybody's like, well, so what? Well, to me, it's not rational thinking that you're going to credit, 4 sprints higher than you've given to the winner of a 82-game 6-month marathon. But it is what it is.
You had shared with me that since the President's Trophy was first awarded in 1986, that only 8 of those teams went on to win the Stanley Cup. Does this give you greater appreciation for what your Ranger team did in 94?
I think so. I mean, although, of course, we were on the brink, as you know, against the Devils, but they were second overall in the standings that year. And then we were down to Game 7 against Vancouver and won in regulation, and we're not going into overtime. But yeah, it is so darn hard to win everything, to just take away all the marbles, take away the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup, and then, of course, the Conn Smythe Trophy and whatever other individual awards your players are getting. It's just too darn hard. To win that President's Trophy, you have to grind it out so hard all regular season. You're tired by the time you come to the playoffs. I don't think there's any shame in Colorado losing. I think there's shock in Colorado losing because we all thought so highly of them. But I don't think there's any shame in the season that they've had in 25-26.
A couple of players that are particularly notable here, and for Brent Burns, 1,579 regular season games without a Stanley Cup. Hasn't missed a game since November 21st of 2013. He'll break the Ironman record in game 58 next year if he re-ups with the club. And this is a guy that has put so much into this for so long. And as we just mentioned, he never misses a game, hasn't missed a game in 12 and a half years. And for him to go down like this, you had a feel for him.
Of course you do. And Burnsy's a great guy. And I would be stunned if he doesn't play next year. I mean, he is such a specimen. I know he's slowed down. I know he's not the same as he was when he played for the Minnesota Wild or the San Jose Sharks, but he still seemed to me to log a lot of ice time. As the announcers kept saying on TV, he always gets his shots through. I would be stunned if he doesn't surface somewhere. It'll all be about the salary cap and who can afford to have him. Although the salary cap is going up, as you've mentioned many times, and it'll reset on July 1st. But I think in a 32-team league, which means 192 defensemen, if you take 6 for each of those clubs, he's got to be in the top 192 defensemen in the world.
I would agree. And he was only making $1 million this year. And I think somebody, as you said, is going to find room for him. On the other side of this, here's Mitch Marner, plays 9 seasons in Toronto, leaves under somewhat controversial circumstances. He's a Cup finalist in his first year in Vegas.
And you know what? I don't know Mitch Marner, but I'm really happy for him. I'm so happy for him. He went out of Toronto with people writing, oh, thanks for all your good regular seasons. You don't do anything in the playoffs and, blah, 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 all this stuff. Gets to Vegas, has a fabulous regular season, comes into the playoffs, and is one of the stars of the entire playoffs for anybody in this tournament, and is now going on to the final, while the team that he left behind, his own hometown Toronto Maple Leafs, are a complete and utter shambles.
Well, not only are the Golden Knights relatively healthy now, they're going to get some time off, similar to what Carolina Hurricanes got in their first 2-round series by virtue of sweeps. By the way, regular season against the two clubs that are playing in the East, they were 2-0, was Vegas, against Carolina during the regular season, both of those in October, so we know how much that's going to mean. And the Golden Knights were 0-1-1 against the Canadiens. So with that, we now move over to the East. And on Wednesday, Carolina and Montreal will play 8 o'clock Eastern on TNT, with the Hurricanes holding a 2-1 lead. I don't think there's a lot to say here, because we know what this is going to be from Carolina. And for me, the only question is, can Montreal get pucks behind that Carolina defense and have any sort of forecheck and some sort of pushback? Because there's no way that Montreal can win 3 more games in this series playing the way they did in games 2 and 3, even though both went to overtime.
If they don't start to mount some offense, they're not going to be able to beat Carolina, because Carolina can defend and Carolina can score. So they can go both ways, and they're fast and they're very disciplined. And I'm not saying that Montreal can't do it, but boy, they haven't shown that they are able to mount offense against the Carolina Hurricanes and score. And you can't win every game with having 10 and 11 shots on net. You've got to have more than that. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, maybe the Canadiens' game plan is this, Vic. Well, if we try to get a bunch of shots, we'll open up ourselves for chances going the other way, because we'll be so focused on going offensive, which could be true. But you're going to have to do something, because you can't win games by scoring 1 goal on 10 shots and leaving it that way.
Even though Carolina was rusty in game 1, the Canadiens were comfortable in a track meet, going shot for shot with them. So something's got to change. And either they open up the game or they establish a forecheck. But either way, Rod Brindamore's team will be ready for whatever Marty St. Louis' group is throwing at them.
And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure tonight. Again, as I said for game 3, I said this, it was going to be harder for Montreal to play in Montreal than it was going to be for Carolina to play in Montreal. And I think I was proven right in game 3. And I think the same is going to happen tonight. You're going to have that raucous crowd waving their towels, waiting for whoever the torch bearer is tonight to come out. You're going to have all this screaming and you're going to have this chaos, and it's going to go right through the players. But you got to also understand that the players don't want to let those people down. And that goes into you just as much as, isn't this great to have this kind of support? Let's go out and kill these guys. But you're also going, like 20,000 people are expecting you to win and wanting you to win. If you don't win, you ruin their night. And if you do win, they're in heaven. And that's really a lot of pressure on that home team.
I think they have the whole country behind them. So it's not only their local
I'm
fans,
not sure about that.
a lot of the country, they want to cut back in Canada.
All right. Well, you're arguing against a Canadian. I will tell you that there are lots of English Canadians who do not want Montreal to ever win a cup. They don't care if Canada never wins as long as Montreal doesn't win.
That I can agree with. Can we agree on this, though? The term must win is one of the most overused cliches in sports.
Yeah.
This is a must-win for Montreal. They're not winning 3 straight if they go down tonight.
No, they're not. They're not winning 3 straight if they go down tonight. But I don't think that they can look at it as a must-win. They've just got to go out and play.
They should listen to us. This is a must-win for them. Final note, Kenny Malkin, returning for his 21st season with the Pittsburgh Penguins, signs a 1-year deal for $5.5 million. There's also some bonuses in there for games played. That'll be $500,000 if he reaches a certain threshold. $1 million, the Pens make the playoffs in 2027, and $500,000 for each round the Penguins win should they make it. And, of course, this is coming with the ever-popular no movement clause. But in this case, this is a guy that should finish his career where it started.
Absolutely. And if you want me to look in my crystal ball and tell you how much will Evgeny Malkin have to report to the tax collector for next year, I will tell you that he will, in all likelihood, make $6 million, and that's it. I don't see the extra mil coming for making the playoffs next year, and I don't see a $500,000 bonus for a round 1 in the playoffs. But I was wrong last year, and I could be wrong next year.
Well, you'll get a chance to mend that prediction when we do our summer coolers in August. Our website is NHLWraparound.com. Stanley Cupdate will return on Thursday when we recap this 4th game between the Hurricanes and Canadiens. The video of our interview with Gary Bettman will be dropping on YouTube on Thursday. And on Friday, we will not have a regular show because obviously the West is done. But tune in. Buffalo Sabres spring cleaning. On behalf of Neil, I'm Vic. We'll speak with you Thursday.